Welcome to maldef's 2018 Chicago Awards Gala. Tonight is brought to you by the generous support of our co-chair, Toyota. Vayamos juntos. Maldef is grateful for the support of its national sponsors, Toyota and Verizon. Our national airline sponsor, Southwest Airlines, and our national law firm partner, the Sidley Austin Foundation. Maldef is proud to honor the Honorable Elizabeth Hernandez, Illinois State Representative for the 24th District. Co-founders of Back of the Yard Coffee Company, Jesse Inigas and Myra Hernandez, and Luis Ricardo Fraga, Professor of Political Science and Director of the Institute for Latino Studies at the University of Notre Dame. Please welcome your Master of Ceremonies for this evening, anchor and reporter for ABC7 Chicago, Stacy Baca.
Buenas noches. Good evening, everyone. To all the ladies and gentlemen out there. Appreciate being here. What a tremendous honor it is to be the MC of this event once again. So we want to welcome maldef's 2008 Chicago Awards Gala. This is what's happening this evening. I'm Stacy Baca with ABC7 Chicago. If you haven't had a chance to tune in into the news the last 15, 17 years or so it's great to be here. It's always an honor to be here as well. So on behalf of maldef, we want to thank each and every one of you for joining this celebration tonight and this chance to raise money for such an important cause. I don't know how many of you walked across Michigan Avenue on your way here, but there was actually a protest for people who are supporting the families who are being separated. And I had to walk. It was just, I guess the moment I crossed Michigan Avenue and I really crossed right through those protesters as they were going across the street there and on my way here. And just that moment kind of made me realize why we're all here in some ways, right? Okay, so tonight would not be possible without support, of course, from all of you, donations and that sort of thing to keep maldef going. I'm honored to be here as well to celebrate all the victories of the Latino community with an organization that is about to mark its 50th anniversary as a national leader in civil rights and community empowerment. So we have a great program lined up here, amazing honorees this evening as well. But before we begin, I want to share important information about maldef as well. For those of you who may be just jumping on board recently or need a little refresher of what this is all about, a little history lesson. Maldef opened its doors in 1968. It was in San Antonio, Texas, following coordinated efforts by Latino lawyers and community activists from throughout the Southwest United States to create a legal organization to serve the Latino community. That was way back then. It seems almost just as relevant now, right? Okay, so today maldef is recognized as the Latino legal voice for civil rights in America. Maldef's victories throughout the decades have immeasurably benefited the Latino community. Let's talk about some of those. Working to secure voting rights, equal educational opportunities to make sure Latino kids were represented as well, non-discriminatory workplaces, and fairness and justice in government services. Maldef has championed the rights of immigrants for nearly 5 decades. From the groundbreaking case of Plyler versus Doe, I understand so many of you in this room are lawyers. The landmark 1982 Supreme Court ruling that guaranteed the right of all children to a free K-12 education, regardless of immigration status, to the ongoing battle to support DACA recipients whose rights are under attack, of course, by the current administration. Maldef will continue to push Congress and legislatures around the country to enact laws that protect and defend civil and constitutional rights. While maldef has helped bring about significant gains in civil rights, the nation's widening political divide means there's still work to be done. There's still a long road ahead as well. So we are grateful that maldef is committed to leading the fight in our courts to secure a better quality of life for Latinos throughout this great nation. And we're also grateful to have your support this evening for the very important work that still needs to be done. We're going to start our program this evening with a special introduction, and as you know, maldef has an office right here in Chicago to ensure the rights of Latinos in 11 Midwest states. So they're serving an entire region here. This year it has a new leader as well. She's a Chicago native whose distinguished legal career is highlighted by her work with low-income clients, her advocacy on behalf of victims of human trafficking as well. So please welcome to the stage maldef's newly appointed Midwest Regional Counsel, Griselda Vega Samuel.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you for that kind introduction. And buenas noches a todos y todos. ¿Cómo están? Great. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our annual maldef Chicago Awards dinner. I'm excited to be here, my first gala dinner as a regional counsel and one of, I hope, many more. I'm really happy to see a lot of friendly faces, many of whom were recently with me at the welcome reception that was graciously hosted by our maldef board member, Gabriel Fuentes of Jenner & Black. Woo, yes. And also Juan Morado and Martin Quintanilla of the Hispanic Lawyers Association of Illinois. So thank you again for your generous support. I want to take a few minutes just to acknowledge a few folks in the audience tonight that are joining us and that we're really happy you're with us. State Senator Cristina Castro. Current state rep and Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, who was here a little bit earlier. Justice Jesse Reyes. And of course, I have to thank my maldef Chicago team, Irene Padilla, Juan Vasquez, Priscilla Horta, and Stephen Monroy, and our great group of summer interns who have been working very hard for the last few weeks. Really a round of applause. Without them, I wouldn't be here. So I just want to say that there are some prepared remarks, that I did prepare some remarks, and they're in your program, so please do take a moment to review them. But I'd like to highlight a few milestones just to really highlight the great work that we've been doing so far. We recognize that given the continued attacks on our Latino community, from the cruel and inhumane separation of families at the border to the ongoing discriminatory actions by federal and state officials and private actors who violate our community's rights, your Midwest Regional Office of maldef, based here in Chicago, continues to respond with action as we fight these injustices against our Latino community. And we are making a difference. I want to highlight a couple of our most recent successes. In this Illinois State Legislature, we introduced 2 bills. The first one being a licensing bill that basically allows that no applicant seeking a professional license would be denied that license based simply on their immigration status. Our second bill was a housing bill that will protect immigrant communities from landlords who would use their immigration status as a way to evict them from their homes. Both bills, yes, both bills on their way to the governor's desk. So our advocacy continues as we really hope he signs those into law. So that work continues. And while this administration continues their attacks on voter suppression, maldef's advocacy includes our federal lawsuit to keep that citizenship question off the census. That's right. But also in partnerships with many of our allies who are in this room tonight, The recent Illinois state appropriated $1.5 million to support census participation, really highlighting the importance of educating our community on this critical issue. So we must make sure that there are plenty of resources there to make sure that every person gets counted, regardless of their immigration status. The maldef office, the maldef Chicago office continues to make progress in the face of a coordinated adversity. As your regional Midwest Chicago office, I commit to you that together with my team, we will not waver. And we are more encouraged and emboldened by these successes, and we have been able to accomplish in these last several months. With your ongoing and invaluable support, we will help ensure additional victories. So I look forward to meeting all of you and continuing to work with all of you to protect the civil rights of Latinos in the Midwest. We have 11 states, so we have a lot of ground to cover, so we can't do it alone. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you. So enjoy the evening. Gracias.
Griselda, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Welcome to the maldef team, as obviously, too. Let's go ahead and move on now to celebrate some of the success stories out there as well, the careers, the accomplishments of this year's amazing honorees. They have all dedicated themselves to enriching the Latino community, and as you'll see and also hear, we owe them a great debt of gratitude for their commitment, their passion, their willingness to continue the fight, wherever that fight may lead them. We begin tonight with honoring a steadfast champion of community engagement, Latino rights, both here in the Chicago area, also in the halls of the state legislature. State Representative Elizabeth Lisa Hernandez, this year's recipient of maldef's Excellence in Government Service Award. So Lisa Hernandez is serving her 6th term in Illinois' General Assembly as representative of the 24th District, which covers several Cook County communities, Cicero and Berwyn included. She has built a reputation as a longtime community activist, has focused on drawing resources to her district as well, and among many other initiatives too, Lisa has worked to help create jobs, ensure some safety, improve the quality of education in those communities. Born in Missouri, that's something new I didn't know about her there. Raised in Chicago as well, though, Lisa knows firsthand the challenges faced by her constituents. She was a single mother at the age of 21. That didn't stop her, though, from pursuing a public service career. She worked for 17 years in Cicero Public School District 99, where she managed the district's multi-million-dollar educational grants office. She went on to become a senior policy advisor to former Lieutenant Governor Pat Quinn, was the first elected as the 24th District Representative back in 2002. She chairs the Consumer Protection Committee and is vice chair of the Appropriations and Elementary and Secondary Education as well. So over the course of her legislative career, Lisa has developed a strong record of advocacy for immigrants' rights. We've actually seen each other on stories where I'm out there covering the story and she's fighting for the immigrant who's detained, so it's kind of like different paths have crossed at different times. She has co-sponsored Senate Bill 957, the 2013 law that authorizes the state to issue temporary visitors' driver's licenses to Illinois immigrants who are undocumented. Most recently, she stood up for Dreamers and other immigrants with her sponsorship this year of House Bill 5097, which would prohibit the state from denying professional licenses based solely on immigration status. So please turn your attention to the screens here for a video tribute to Lisa Hernandez.
Well, I think she has definitely been the champion of our, immigrant rights issues here in the state for many years. So I think that, she's someone that is willing to speak out, who is often willing to be unpopular, to do the right thing, and has really, championed a lot of the issues of our communities.
I think the one area where she has had a tremendous track record of accomplishment has been on those policies and those budget allocations that have to do with equitable resources and access for immigrant families and immigrant youth. And she was also a big part of the DREAM Act. She was a big part of all the big pieces of legislation, the Trust Act, which is passed, doing a lot of the hard work, a lot of the work on the ground to make sure that it had the support it needed to be passed.
She has tremendous respect statewide, not only from the Latino community, but from essentially everybody that I've ever spoken to or mentioned Lisa's name to. She really is a special person, not only as a legislator, but as a human being. She has a great mind, and more importantly, she has a great heart.
And I have to say that over the years, Representative Hernandez has been one of the strongest allies to certainly the Latino Policy Forum and to the Latino community in general. Representative Hernandez always makes time for the issues, and it's really just been remarkable to see her growth in the General Assembly, her leadership in the General Assembly, her maturity, her confidence, and just the leadership that she's taken and demonstrated on key issues.
I consider Lisa one of the champions of the disenfranchised, the disadvantaged, the old, the young, the dreamers, the extraordinary amount of energy that she puts into helping those in need, which is really what government should be doing. And I can't imagine a stronger advocate. And I think that's what drives her, in addition to personalizing everything that she takes on.
So, ladies and gentlemen, maldef is proud to recognize State Representative Elizabeth Lisa Hernandez with its Excellence in Government Service Award. Representative? Whoa. Thank you. It really is very meaningful. It is a great honor to receive an award from an organization that I highly respect. Thank you. Thank you all very much for being here this evening. A big thank you to maldef and everyone who made this wonderful evening possible. When I entered the public arena over 20 years ago, I got involved for reasons that many of my colleagues share. I experienced and saw what I viewed as abuses and mismanagement by the local administration back in those days. And I couldn't sit on the sidelines waiting for change to occur. The devotion and sense of pride I have for my community compelled me to become involved. And it wasn't just about how the town was managed, it was how the management affected every person and their lives. All of us here tonight, I believe, share these same values. We are united together by our passion to move society forward. It is this internal flame of the human spirit that lights and guides our path. Many forces will try to dim this light, but we must use our collective strength to keep it going. This includes joining our networks and bridging the partisan divide by identifying areas of common interest in order to get things done. Yes.
This sentiment has always been true, but especially in today's climate. We see the same kind of abuses and mismanagement happening in Washington right now. The Trump administration has unleashed an enormous Pandora's box, spewing destruction, hate, and eroding our institutions and the principles upon which our country was founded. Much like when I first ran for office, these are reasons for us all to become more involved and encourage our friends and neighbors to do the same. What happened in Springfield this year is a testament that it can be done. I'm pleased to say we collectively, on a partisan effort, passed the budget. Yes, yes. What's even more interesting is we passed funding and legislation that will benefit the immigrant communities and, in essence, help move the Latino agenda ahead. We funded welcoming centers, immigration services, added funding to health and educational initiatives, and increased funding toward the census, which is coming up here. That is big. We now have legislation that places further protections towards our immigrant families, children, and career professionals. It was great to see Maldef's present in Springfield. You were in action. And I hope and ask that that continues in Springfield. I was just talking to someone at the table and expressed the importance of that in Springfield. Oftentimes, us legislators, when we're trying to garner the support for these initiatives or legislation to pass, we need those experts. And we had an expert from maldef where we at times would talk and strategize on how we could move those supports. So it's important. Those networks are important. This award humbles me, and it is a reminder and validation that the work I am pursuing is making a difference, and it is helping our community. Over the years, I have worked with many of you, and you know who you are, and those experiences have enriched and formed who I am as a public servant. So with that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, maldef, and everyone who has made our community better one day at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative, so much. Congratulations as well. And at this time, excited to bring up to the stage the newly installed chair of maldef's Board of Directors, the co-founder and executive chairman of Saber es Poder, Raul Lomeli Azubel. Raul?
Muy buenas noches, familia. You know, I was thinking, it's Maldefians in English. I said, how would we say Maldefians in Spanish? Maldefians igual maldefistas, I was thinking. Maldefistas. And I see that we are many tonight, and many thousands more not joining us. But I did bring my best friend for tonight, which is this beautiful, what would you call it? You know, I was tent. Thank you. You know, when I arrived from Mexico at the age of 16, I started to forget some words in Spanish. I don't know why. And my dad said, tenemos un problema, mijo. You're not learning English and you're forgetting Spanish. You're going to be a mute by the end of the year. So at the end, I did end up learning a few words. The accent remains. But I always tell people I do speak with an accent, but I do not think with one. And I'm hoping that you can help me tonight, otherwise I am going to look pretty dumb. I have exactly 8 minutes and 30 seconds, and I see Tom already, he started the clock. I need to ask for your help. maldef for 50 years has taken on the most courageous of cases. You all are aware of those. Some of them happen regionally, and we have Griselda here to testify about that. But for the most part, they take place in places even when we do not have an office. Like in Kern County, just north of Los Angeles, where for many years, for generations, Latinos have not had the representation necessary to be able to advocate for their political voice. Every case is strictly and carefully selected to ensure that we can have a precedent. And when maldef does, and they do, win a lot, that's the only time when maldef can recoup some of the legal fees. But sometimes it takes weeks, months, or years. And that's why we need the support of all of you and of your friends. And this tent allows us to be able to do it in a way that not only are we going to be able to see how we're doing as a group, as a familia, as maldefistas, but you also have the opportunity to also give yourself a shout, say, I'm donating this, or you can make up whichever name you would like to thank for. It's a very easy number to remember. It's 41444. 41444. So if you take out your phone number, your phone, and imagine that you're texting, I know we all do, right? We're going to send a text. To which number? I'm going to send a text to my favorite number, which is 41444. And then on the message, we need to write maldef. And then we write how much we would like to donate. And then we write the name that you would like to receive on stage. So let's go through this again. We take out our phone. We text to the number 41444. And then where you would write the message, as the instruction says here in the tent, in case my accent is not allowing me to properly represent the process, we write maldef, space, the amount that you would like to give, space, and the name. You can make it up to Trump for all I care, because that's exactly where this money is going. And it's not going for him, it's going against him. It's going to get our dignity back. It's going to continue to ensure that maldef stands for the most American things of all, which is proper representation according to the Constitution. And I need your help. I need your help. Because unless we get the resources necessary, we may have to let go of that one case that we wanted to take on. We're not afraid of the fight. We're not afraid of how long it may take. And if for some reason we were to see that we don't reach the amount that we want, you can take it home. You can spread it on social media. You can share it with your friends. Because every dollar that we're going to be getting here is going to be going for a good cause. Actually, let's make it even easier. If you commit to a certain amount, and once you do, you will get an incoming text. And that incoming text is going to say, this is where you do your pledge. You click, you put your PayPal or your credit card. You don't need to give it all at once. You can say, you know what? I want to spread my $500, $1,000 over 12 payments. And that way, every month you're reminded that you're supporting a cause that is close to your heart, close to you. Every month you're reminded that your funds are going to noble causes. You want to know which noble causes? Open, please, from page 13 to page 19 on today's program. You'll be able to see just a few of the instances where our work has been expressed in the media, and then what type of lawsuit we are fighting or we have already won. And that's just a small example of the work that maldef does every single day. Now, the less time that I'm here, and we almost got there, the more time that we're going to be able to provide to Tom Science, and you cannot miss that, because every time Tom speaks, The board listens. The country listens. The government sometimes not so much. But in the court of law, they know. And let me end with this. We're not about, maybe we should, doing fundraisers. As Tom Sands is in the Supreme Court fighting for DAPA, thank you. I knew you were going to do this for us. And I'll end with this. As Tom is fighting for DAPA in the Supreme Court, there was not a single tweet or a single Facebook to say, donate to Maldef to help us fight and to take our case in front of the Supreme Court. No, no. When we do it for the right reasons. So tonight, you have helped us. Thank you so much. And as a token of my appreciation, I'm matching that amount tonight. Thank you.
Raul, nicely done. And thanks to everyone who donated this evening. It was fun to watch on the screen there to see us reach our goal in that amount of time. So remember that Maldef needs your continuing support to grow, to provide a voice as a leading Latino legal voice for civil rights in America with your support as well. You can continue to text your contributions to the end of tonight's gala. So that is going to be still continuing. If you didn't have a chance to do it at this moment, please do by the end of the evening. We're also going to continue with our celebration of the careers and contributions of tonight's honorees. And next up, we have a pair of business owners who we had a chance to sit next to. Yeah, very exciting. And they exemplify local entrepreneurship, social responsibility. There are many aspects to their story here. Jesse Aniquez and Mayra Hernandez are here. We honored them tonight with Maldef's Excellence in Community Service Awards. So it's appropriate that we bestow this honor on them as you're enjoying your after-dinner coffee too, and there's a reason why. They actually have a wonderful store that you should go visit, coffee shop in Back of the Yards. It's called the Back of the Yards Coffee Company. And if you haven't been there, they're doing some fabulous things, from getting coffee all the way from Chiapas to Chicago to helping in their own neighborhood, in their own community, making sure that there's a place where kids can hang out, safe. And just their story is a wonderful one. So with crowdfunding, a little bit about their background too, they were able to bring in hundreds of small donations. Myra and Jesse opened up the Back of the Yards coffee place in 2006 with an innovative business model in mind, roasting, serving great coffee, that was part of it, but also fostering a positive social, economic, and environmental impact as well in their community. So beyond their store too, having an impact there. Jesse and Myra invest $1 from every bag of coffee sold to programs in the Back of the Yards. So that money will go back into the community. That promotes peace, it promotes education, and they really want to make sure those outside the community have an image of Back of the Yards too, that it's changing, that there are wonderful people in that community just down the block, just in the neighborhood. They also run a cafe, the Back of the Yards Coffee House, which I mentioned, which hires locally to help reduce the youth unemployment rate, to improve the neighborhood's economy, decrease violence. All this comes together. Their business-savvy activism, too, extends far beyond Chicago. Jesse and Myra have established direct relationships with coffee growers, as I mentioned earlier, in Chiapas, Mexico. So that allows for the farmers all the way over there to produce a higher yield, retain more revenue for them, too. So there's a chain event here, really kind of the chain that impacts everyone along the way. Jesse and Myra are also committed to reducing their carbon footprint by using compostable paper and plastic products in their store. Their personal stories, equally inspiring too. Both have been active in their church communities, their communities, since they were teenagers. Jesse was the first in his family to graduate from college. He earned his degree in psychology and Latino studies from the University of Illinois at Chicago, where he was an active leader and organizer in organizations such as Mexican Students of Asalan, and he was also a student representative for the Chancellor's Committee on the Status of Latinos. Mayra was a first-generation immigrant from Guanajuato, Mexico. She was organized on behalf of Dreamers and for Allies Run, a fundraising effort that actually helps provide scholarships to undocumented students from the back of the arts area and surrounding communities. Let's go ahead and take a look at the video tribute prepared by Maldef for Jesse and Mayra.
Jesse and Myra come from the back of the arts. They grew up seeing a lot of very difficult situations, and I think that out of that grew a great sense of value for others. My sense is that they are driven by a desire for change, definitely for justice, and a desire for inclusion.
Jesse and Myra have a lot to be proud of, even though they are young. They still have a lot to do, and I know that they understand this, but I think that they have been agents of change. They have been these dynamic leaders who have stepped up and asked critical questions. They've been able to connect with old-time residents of the neighborhood as well as teenagers in the community. They have instilled hope, and they've put their money where their mouth is.
I think that both of these people have come from environments back of the arts, neighborhoods where they've had a change. Their families have gone through various challenges. Both of them, coming through that suffering, have persevered. And that perseverance has built their character.
I think that what has driven Jesse and Myra has been this desire to create something new, to create something that they were both passionate about. I think they're both very community-driven people, and I think that has ultimately driven them to find different ways to get back to the community, and now they both do it through the coffee shop, but in very different aspects. I know Mayra is really invested in her artwork, and she tries to make that the big focus of the coffee shop. And Jesse has really created this space for community gathering.
I think their greatest achievement is to believe in themselves, that they are blessed, that they are treasures in the community, that they're wanted and needed, and that they carry a banner of hope for others.
I am confident, because of what they have done, that the future of our community is in good hands, that we have talented, visionaries, courageous young people in our ranks who are going to be the leaders of communities, the leaders in our city, in our state, and in our country. They are making their mark on our country's future. They're making their mark and inspiring people to pursue the dreams that they have and to always be conscious of being bridge builders and coalition builders and bringing people together.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Maldef is proud to recognize Jesse Iniquez and Mayra Hernandez with this award for excellence in community service.
Oh, seems like a couple of people know us already. So thank you, everybody. Oh, this is really exciting. First of all, thank you, Maldef, for having us here. Thank you, Priscilla Horta, as well, for helping us get up here on stage. We'd like to thank everyone for their support. This project started out of the need to create safe spaces and economic opportunities in back of the arts. But it's through the community's support that we've been able to accomplish this dream. Through your support, we were able to open the first specialty coffee house in a community where people doubted it would survive. Through your support, we've been able to create 10 jobs in a community that has over 4,500 young people between the ages of 16 and 24 that are out of school and unemployed. Through your support, we've been able to give $1 from every bag of coffee that we sell to programs that promote peace and education in back of the yards. And through your support, we've been able to divert 95% of our waste from landfill to compost as well. And again, through your support, you've helped us put Back of the Yards on the map, and you've helped us become Chicago's most loved coffee place in 2018. So it's because of you, your support, you have allowed us to use coffee, not only to do everything that we just mentioned, but you've also helped farmers in Chiapas to grow a sustainable economy in their own community. Yeah. And we're able to do this by buying directly from them and providing them with the resources to expand their production.
So the vision of Back of the Yards Coffee started 19 years ago when I was a freshman in college. That was the first time I walked into a coffee shop and thought to myself, why don't we have something like this in Back of the Yards? But none of this would be possible without the support of our community. Not only did you help us raise over $17,000, but you have also supported us through our entire journey. Our neighborhood and our mentors provided us opportunities for service. It's through the service opportunities that made a difference in our lives, including, in fact, a couple years ago, working with maldef to help create, work on redistricting to create a more equitable map for Back of the Yard. So we've worked with maldef, so thank you, maldef, for that opportunity. But not only did we learn to value our community and its people, but we've made amazing friendships and colleagues that are just as passionate, if not more. People who not only encourage us and have stood with us during tough times, people who constantly challenge us. Many of you are here today. Thank you. Myra is one of those people. This community brought us together to finally fulfill that dream of opening up that coffee shop, that community coffee shop, that would be a space for people to meet, discuss ideas, and be inspired. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, maldef, and thank you for your support, and we hope to see you very soon at the Back of the Yards Coffee House.
How exciting, right? Jesse was saying earlier when we were eating dinner, his daughter popped up. She's 10 years old. And they were like, boy, she has learned to sit through a lot of boring meetings. So it's almost like a family affair, too. But the lessons that she must be learning at your knee there are fabulous as well, just knowing all the business and everything, too. So what an experience. Our final honoree of the evening has also dedicated his life, his career to the Latino community. It is with great pleasure that I have a chance to introduce Luis Ricardo Fraga, the president of maldef's Lifetime Achievement Excellence in Community Award. Scholars, researchers, government officials, journalists, anyone else who wants to find out anything about the Latino community would be wise, obviously, to turn to Dr. Fraga for wisdom, for guidance, for knowledge that he has had and been able to get over so many different years. So as director of the Institute for Latino Studies at Notre Dame and acting chair too of the university's political science department, he's widely recognized as one of the nation's foremost scholars of American politics and the Latino community. Over more than 30 years, Dr. Fraga has studied and written about voting rights, immigration, education, so many more topics out there too. His lifetime of scholarships include authoring 5 books, more than 40 articles in scholarly journals, and edited volumes, all kinds of writings out there that you could actually check out. He is also a renowned Latino community leader. As part of his current role at Notre Dame, Dr. Fraga established a Latino Studies Scholars Program, the only merit-based academic scholarship program in the country for students who have worked to empower and serve Latino communities during their high school years. His impressive research and academic career includes 16 years at Stanford University, where he served as director of the Stanford Center for Chicano Research. Later, he was director of the Diversity Research Institute and associate vice provost for faculty advancement at the University of Washington. Thanks to his scholarship, his leadership, Dr. Fraga was appointed by President Barack Obama in 2011 to the President's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for Hispanics. That same year, he was named one of the top 100 influentials in the nation by Hispanic Business Magazine. Join me now as we watch maldef's video tribute to Luis Ricardo Fraga.
One question that Luis always asks of himself and of others is, what kind of country do you want to leave for your children and for your children's children? When graduate students, alumni, others call to share with him, this is what I've done in my career. You know, he'll cheer, he'll listen, he'll cry with you if he needs to and you need him to. However, at the end of every conversation is, what are you doing for the Latino community?
I think Luis's legacy will be the students that he's mentored, that he's protected. I think as they move forward in their life, that will be an important legacy to Luis, because Luis is not the type of person who builds walls. He builds bridges, and these bridges are multicultural. And it's just not for the Mexican, it's not for just Hispanic. I think that ultimately will be his legacy, because he knows that none of us can do this alone. We can't do it if we're going to do it just as Mexicans, or me be Irish and just Irish. We got to all do this together as a team. This is America, and this is about immigrants. Immigrants make our country.
I think one thing that's become very obvious to me in working with Luis is just what an honorable man he is, often driven by his faith. But more than anything, he's full of love and compassion, and is open-minded and is very inclusive in many walks of life in terms of just valuing what is best for people. I've seen that very personally in my own relationship with him, and just his care and concern for what's best for me and for my family. And certainly that extends to the community. And so, you know, it's just incredible to work with someone who sees the larger picture in everything, but also really understands that everything comes down to the individual and is very personalized. And so I think our whole community has just benefited from having him here in South Bend, and the university certainly is grateful for his presence.
He sees in these students, who many of whom are first-generation college students, he sees a bit of himself in each of them. He wants to make sure that they flourish at the University of Notre Dame. He's done a wonderful job. He's a wonderful leader. I'm very proud to call him a friend.
I think Luis's legacy lies in all of the students that he has mentored, both undergraduates and graduates. It lies in the research he's done that has made an impact in a practical way on the political voting rights of the community. And I think it lies finally in his leadership in an administrative capacity at universities, where he has established a strong record of a Latino administrator thriving and making new contributions, innovating, ensuring that universities are becoming closer and closer to the communities that they serve.
Please please join me in welcoming to the stage Maldef's Lifetime Achievement, Excellence in Community Service, Luis Ricardo Fraga, everyone.
Thank you. It is a great honor to be here and to be recognized in this way. My thanks to maldef. This is one of the most humbling experiences that I've ever had. I, like many of you in this room, shouldn't be here today. Many of you were path breakers and breakers of glass ceilings and took risks in order to be able to get ahead. We know, if we're honest with ourselves, that we worked hard. We know even more deeply that we are here because of the support that we received from others, from our spouses and partners, like my dear wife, Charlene Aguilar, from our children, like Tomas Aguilar Fraga, who's here, like our mentors, our teachers, and others. We know that we are here on the backs and shoulders of others, and with that comes responsibility to provide opportunities for others. That's what I have tried to do in the course of my academic career. I became a social scientist to pursue social justice, to try to expand opportunities for others. I became a social scientist not to sit in the ivory tower. Don't get me wrong, the ivory tower is very nice. You can sit there and do your thing. But it's not enough, and was never enough, and should not be enough for anyone who's committed to trying to establish communities of social justice. I've learned one thing more than any over my 34 years, and that is that social justice does not happen in the classroom, at a university, in our communities, in our nation, in our government, in our neighborhoods, without vigilance and commitment. We know now, more than ever, how much vigilance and commitment we need to have. We know now more than ever why it is that the type of work that maldef does, and those of us who are privileged to be able to support them in that work, we know why that work is now more important than ever before. And we know the reason. It's hard, but we know the reason. The reason is because our country is founded on principles of white supremacy and domination. And we now have the opportunity to show the country how those principles are no longer acceptable. A dear mentor of our family, now deceased, Father Eugene Boyle, used to give an amazing homily where he talked about the dark side of immigration politics. And the dark side of immigration politics was racism and white supremacy. We see that today and hear it in the cries of the families from Honduras, from Guatemala, from El Salvador. We see it in the tears of the children and of the parents. And for those of us who come from families of Latino origin countries, we know what that sounds like. Mami, papi, mi hijo, mi hija. No sabemos dónde vamos a ir, pero te quiero. Te amo. We know what that sounds like. We feel it in our hearts. And we know that those cries and those tears are the same cries and tears that African American families shed for generations under slavery. And shed today because of our system of racial injustice. We know about the cries and tears shared by our Native American brothers and sisters when they were torn away from their families to go to Americanization schools across the country. We know what those cries and tears were like from the working class immigrant families here in areas like Chicago and the backyards when they had to send their children to the factories in order to feed the families at periods of time. It is important for us to understand that these tears are all shed by the same mothers and fathers. They are shed by us. We must not let that happen. We must not let that happen ever again in our country. We must do all we can to make sure that that does not happen. There is a fundamental pillar of the beliefs of the Congregation of Holy Cross, which is the order of priests that founded the University of Notre Dame. And one of those pillars is the belief in divine providence. Divine providence is the belief that God has a plan for each and every one of us. And it's not necessarily a plan that we all be happy, but it is a plan that we all have responsibility to promote opportunity for others if we're open to accepting that plan. We are in such a moment right now. We are in a moment where we decide what kind of a legacy we want to leave to the next generation, but we are at a point to decide what kind of individual commitment, what kind of community commitment, what kind of organizational commitment we want to provide to make sure that that founding principle of white supremacy no longer has a place in our country, and certainly has no place in the country that we will leave to our children and our grandchildren, our most precious treasures and gifts. If in the course of my professional career I have achieved anything of value, it is that I have learned that it is through this work that we each have the chance to become better people. It may be the case that we have some defeats. It may be the case that at times it seems that the powers are stacked against us, but never, never lose sight of the fact that when you're doing what is right, when you're working for social justice, when you're working to empower the disempowered and protect the most vulnerable, you are doing God's work, and God will reward you, and your community will reward you, and your colleagues will reward you, and Maldef will reward you, and everyone who has a similar set of values will tell you and let you understand and let you see that the life that you have lived is worthy and virtuous, and it is a life that you will be proud to have left to your children and your grandchildren. Thank you very much.
Louise, thank you so much. What a challenge he's put on the table for all of us, right? Just makes you question, what are you doing? How are you helping the Latino community? How are you helping your community? That's a great question to ask, and if you're doing enough, it makes you feel like, oh, maybe I should be doing a little bit more. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage Thomas Saenz, President and General Counsel of Maldef.
Thank you. I hope all of you are glad that you made the time to come here. I certainly am in a difficult week to hear the inspiring remarks of our honorees, to commune with folks who share the values shared by so many across the country, the values that refute what is emanating so often from the corridors of power in Washington, D.C. So let me begin by thanking all of you for being here and for your support of Maldef. Let me also thank Stacy Baca once more for leading us through this evening Thank you for serving as our MC. As many of you are aware, maldef has been in Chicago with the regional office since 1980. And as such, we have a really lengthy and esteemed roster of current and former board members who have come from this community to lead maldef together with their colleagues from across the country. Let me invite all of our board members, past and present, there are many here tonight, to please stand and thank you for your ongoing efforts to support the work of maldef. A very special thank you to our new board chair, Raul Lomelí Azubel, who you heard from earlier, and who put me to shame last year before. I was up here raising the money. He did it in half the time and with certainly greater charm. So that's what we're looking forward to in his leadership for the next 2 years. Thank you, Raul. You all, of course, know that events like this don't come together without the volunteer efforts, hours and hours of efforts of a dinner committee that helps us to fill these tables, to invite folks who have been with us before, but new folks as well, to come and celebrate our honorees. Let me ask all the members of the dinner committee to please stand and accept our gratitude for your efforts this year as well. maldef has a tremendous staff, and it is the lawyers who get the credit in the media and otherwise, but we have so many others who are contributing daily, sacrificing daily to ensure that events like this succeed, to ensure that maldef's philosophy is presented accurately and frequently in the media, to ensure that the money is there to keep the doors open, to ensure that our community education efforts secure an ongoing stream of folks who believe in the civil rights values that drive us. I want to thank the staff members who are responsible for creating this evening, led by our Vice President, Gina Montoya of Development. Her team, Cynthia Gutierrez Alvarez, Heaven Ocampo, Jose Delgado, and others. Our Vice President of Communications, Sandra Hernandez. And our Antonio Marcano in our Communications Department. Thank you all. So I hope this is not your first opportunity, but if it was, I know you were bowled over by our new Chicago Regional Counsel, Griselda Vega, who comes to us, like so many of our staff, with a deep, deep record of experience and commitment to human rights, to civil rights, with a dedication to service, to sacrifice, to leadership, to ensure that maldef's mission of promoting the civil rights of all Latinos living in the United States is a living mission, is a mission that is contributed to daily, is a mission that serves the entire country. Let me thank Griselda Vega for joining us and her entire staff for their work in the Midwest region. I've said it previously, but now let me say it individually. Our honorees tonight, as every evening like this, but tonight particularly needed in what has been an extraordinarily challenging week for all of us. Their inspiring remarks, their inspiring stories certainly have given me a lift to take me through what is inevitably going to be another difficult and challenging week in the remainder of this and next week and the week after. But thank you for allowing us to honor you and for sharing your thoughts, our good, wise, and committed Lisa Hernandez. The innovative and genuine Mayra Hernandez and Jesse Iniguez. And our longtime collaborator, the tenacious and smart and certainly inspiring Professor Luis Fraga. This has been an extraordinary and challenging week. I can't think of a week like it without going back to November of 2016, when maldef held its Los Angeles gala, much like this, slightly larger crowd, 2 days after an election that surprised and shocked and dismayed so many across the country. And I was challenged to deliver remarks to a crowd that felt in some ways despondent, in many ways concerned, and in many ways very, very deeply, deeply shocked by what had occurred. Of course, since January 2017, it has been an unending barrage of attacks, rhetorical and otherwise, on Muslims, on all immigrants, on women, on LGBT folk, on African Americans, on progressives, on anyone who doesn't adhere to a philosophy that seems more and more centered in white nationalism. But chief among the targets of this rhetorical warfare, unprecedented for a leader to engage in rhetorical warfare against his own people, engaging in the kind of words, threats, actions that would ordinarily be directed against a foreign power, but in this case, the rhetorical warfare directed at his own people. Chief among the targets, Latinos, a growing community with increasing political, economic, and community power, seen as a threat by this president. In November 2016, as I thought about what to say to the crowd 2 days after the election, I reverted to history. As a student of history, as someone who believes that history has so much to teach us, I went back to the history of the Latino community, the history of Latino civil rights, the history of this organization, maldef, which for 50 years now has waged a battle in the courts and in the legislatures and in the city halls and in the communities across the country to try to arrive at a nation that is truer to the principles expressed in its Constitution, despite a many, many years history of deviating from those principles. Tonight, I thought about history again, but not to repeat the history of the Latino community, though I ask you to remember that history in your own mind and to remember what we bring to this battle in the Latino community, what we have overcome, what we have achieved, what we have envisioned and made real in our struggle for civil rights. But the history that seems most apt today is not the history of Latino civil rights. It is for us all to remember a more sordid period of our history, when despite a great victory against fascism, we engaged at the same time in this country in an unprecedented isolation, removal, and internment of immigrants and citizens simply because they were Japanese American. This is a history that goes back over 75 years. But despite the headlines that will say that Donald Trump, who never backs down, backed down with his executive order today, we know that that executive order is simply another attempt at misdirection, at deflection. And that in fact what the executive order issued this afternoon by Donald Trump would do is engage this country once more in a mass internment and incarceration in isolated and deplorable conditions of families distinguished merely by their race and origin. That is a sordid history that we must recall and never forget as we are asked to celebrate that children will no longer be ripped from the arms of their mothers and fathers, but instead will be caged together with their families in isolated tent cities with little access for those inside to those outside, and for those outside to those inside. When I thought about 75 years ago, I also thought about a presidential election 70 years ago today. The first election for a president who had acceded to office on the death of his predecessor, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. 1948 was the one and only election of Harry Truman to be president of the United States. Now, as a kid, I would look for those coincidences. Truman, T-R-U-M. Trump, T-R-U-M. What might we learn by comparing True Man to Trump Man? Now, Truman was an imperfect president. There is no question that he made mistakes. There's no question that he engaged in violations of rights. But he was at least a civil rights champion whose steps to promote civil rights exceeded those of his better-known predecessor, FDR, and his better-known successor, Dwight Eisenhower. But what Truman was perhaps best known for was his ability and his willingness to face his own responsibility and own it. Let's compare. You may recall from your history books that 70 years ago, Harry Truman held up a newspaper headline that said, "Dewey defeats Truman." A mistaken headline, but he held it up with pride. And if I recall my history correctly, he never made an accusation of widespread voter fraud that led to that headline. He never suggested that non-citizens had voted for his opponent. He seemed ready in that picture to accept the results of the vote regardless. Trump Man, as you know, took a different approach when he thought he was going to lose the election, and even when he won the election. The responsibility was not his or his supporters. The responsibility was on voter fraud. Famously, Harry Truman was known for the phrase on his office desk in the White House. It said, "The buck stops here." Now, what that meant was that the responsibility ended with the president. Now, I've often imagined, I note that Donald Trump was actually born when Harry S. Truman was president. Perhaps he learned a bit of history. Clearly, he doesn't seem to have remembered any of it or recalled any of it or retained any of it. But perhaps at some point he learned that history. He apparently understood the buck stops here to mean money stopped at the president's desk, because he seems to have run his presidency with regular violations of the Emoluments Clause, with ham-fisted attempts to support, defend his children's businesses, with the audacity to sign a tax measure that would benefit him and his peers more than anyone else in this country. To him, the buck stops here means all the dollars flow to his desk. But to Harry Truman, it meant the responsibility was with the president. Trump Man, on the other hand, has driven his presidency around many themes, but one is clearly about misdirection, deflection of blame, and scapegoating. It is odd to have a president with imperial pretensions who assures us how powerful he is, how huge he is, and yet cannot accept responsibility for anything. Equally true this week, as he blamed the law, a court settlement, the minority in the House and the Senate, the people, for forcing him to engage in some of the most inhumane conduct that we have seen in recent decades. Even today, in his executive order, he premises the change on needing to have a court, a federal court. Now, as an aside, we all remember his contempt for federal courts in general, including a Mexican-American judge who was biased against him in the campaign, including judges who've ruled against him on the Muslim ban. He has contempt for district court judges. But in his executive order, he premises change on the power of a judge to change a court settlement. This is an extraordinary level of deflection, misdirection by a leader of any country, much less this country. Imperial pretensions, and yet childish prevarications to deflect blame, responsibility from himself. Now, it does not escape those of us at maldef that when it's not people that he's blaming the law. The law that at maldef and in this room, based on recent civil rights history, we understand to be a protector, a defender, a promoter of rights and values that are central to the success of this nation. He views the law as an epithet. He views the law as a scapegoat. We've seen it more than once. He claims, without any support whatsoever, that the law required him to attempt to end deferred action for childhood arrivals. He claimed that the law requires him, through an attorney general who is distinguished by his lack of understanding of the law and his apparent disinterest in understanding the law. But Trump has blamed the law through his attorney general for forcing him to prosecute every person who crosses the border with the misdemeanor of illegal entry. Perversely, he has blamed the law in forcing him to provide pardons that he did not need to provide to folks like Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He blames the law. He refuses to accept responsibility. But we in this room also know that his favorite scapegoat among the people is the Latino community. When he began his campaign with a slur against Mexican immigrants, continued with that slander against a Mexican-American judge, took office with a series of executive orders that target the Latino community above all others, as he continues to construct a government with few representatives from our community in any position, not a single appellate court nominee from the Latino community so far, only a handful of district court nominees, none of them confirmed, a single member of the cabinet, and that because of the default of his initial choice for labor secretary. A disinterest in the history of our community that had him announcing the end of DAPA, deferred action for parents of Americans, on the very date that was the anniversary of the Plyler versus Doe decision that our MC described earlier. This is a president who seemingly would see our community written out of existence, confined to those tent cities in deserts that Central American immigrants under his executive order would be housed, confined to back offices, back alleys, to the back bench across the country. That is the implicit goal of this administration. But we know that that misdirection, that deflection will not lie. He will lie, but that will not lie. We know in our community that we see the truth, we believe the truth, and we will seek the truth. We will not retreat from what has occurred this week as a result of an executive order that simply doubles down on creating a second class of human beings who can be confined indefinitely with their children in tent cities. We know that we can forge a different path. Luis talked about pathfinders in this room and beyond. In the Latino community, we have the skilled navigators, we have the skilled intellectuals, we have the skilled workers to forge a path that deviates from where this president would lead us to an America that is truer to its ideals, truer to its principles, truer to the values expressed in the Constitution that unites every one of us, from those who have been here for generations to those who approach the border tomorrow and next week and the week after. The values in that Constitution have been the bedrock of our thriving as a nation. And in the Latino community, we know that we have the skill, the experience, together with our allies, to forge a different path, beyond resistance, to find and forge the path to a better America. We know that given a choice between true man and Trump man, or modernizing both true human and Trump bot, we know that we can forge a path to true humane treatment of every person, to true respect for civil rights, to true respect for equity and equality, to true respect for due process, to a true human America that rejects the misdirection of Trump and achieves the goals that have been dreamed, that have been sought, that have been built by generations and that will be built in the future. At maldef, we've seen the blame on the law, we've seen the blame on the Latino community, and we know we have a central role to play, which is why we are in court, defending against a collusive lawsuit between Texas and the federal government to end DACA, which is why we are in court, challenging the unlawful inclusion last minute of a question on citizenship in the constitutionally obligated United States Census in 2020. It's why we are in court, challenging corporations like Motel 6 for turning in its own guests to ICE, corporations like Wells Fargo for refusing to even consider loan applications from DACA recipients, against corporations like Bank of America for refusing to hire or consider hiring work-authorized DACA recipients, against the state of Texas for the most draconian anti-immigrant state legislation in recent history, and against the state of Indiana for a prohibition on non-citizens achieving a legal change of name. Now, that President Truman was a Midwesterner. We've had some great presidents from the Midwest. Flawed, imperfect, but some great presidents. We can together, and we know at maldef we cannot achieve what we need to without the support of all of you, but we can collectively together forge that path to a true, humane United States of America. Thank you.
Tom Signs, everyone, thank you very much for the service to maldef. I can only imagine all the hours you spend working. I mean, that's like a nonstop job, I can only imagine. So on behalf of myself, everyone here, just want to deeply thank you for being part of this, being part of this wonderful evening. That concludes the 2018 Chicago Gala. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Don't forget you could text those cards as well. So keep that rolling too. I think the mission and the money was so evident tonight on where that is all going. So have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you.